speak with you today. For that, I would like to thank Professor Soumya as well as Department of Bioengineering from Netaji University, Delhi. It's my pleasure to speak with you. Today, I would like to present some of the work which we are doing in IICT, specifically on using waste as a feedstock by mode of biorefinery format, trying to produce fuels and chemicals. So this is work which we are trying to do since 2005 or so 2005. We started initially with hydrogen production by using waste as a feedstock, and slowly we moved towards biorefinery approach in order to make it economically viable as well as sustainable. So that I would like to present in the context of circular economy. So I am basically from Central Government Institute, Research Institute, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, where we do basic and applied research specifically on chemical technologies. And our department, Department of Energy and Environmental Engineering, we work on wastewater treatment technologies specific to chemical wastewater treatment. And we also do basic and applied research, and our major focus is towards resource recovery aspects using biological routes. In this direction, we are working on acidogenesis, bioelectrogenesis, photosynthesis, and bioenoxygenesis, which we are trying to loop it in a circular mode in a biorefinery format, so that we can recover the various products, that is trying to increase the resource recovery efficiency, which I will present. So today in my presentation, initially I will start discussing about energy and fossils and try to go towards why we have to move from linear to circular economy. Then I would like to present some of the data which is specific towards addressing waste as a feedstock for bioeconomy. And then I would briefly discuss bioeconomy, biorefinery, and some of the enabling technologies which we are doing in ICT. I would like to show as examples. And finally, I will conclude with presenting integrated biorefinery models. So coming to energy spectrum, everybody know that we are dependent on fossils since industrialization one, that is 1850. From the 1850 onwards, the increment in usage of energy or usage of fossils has increased exponentially, particularly after 1950. The usage is significantly higher, and at the same time, the climate change issues has mounted significantly. And also you can see with the present consumption pattern, these fossils will not be available for future generation, particularly because they are finite, and after 2050, their availability will significantly reduce. So because of two issues, one is climate change as well as finite nature of these fossils, we are searching towards alternative energy, particularly renewable energy. So when we look into the renewable energy in Indian spectrum, it's about near to 13% of renewable energy is in our energy spectrum. And when we subdivide again this 13%, mostly it is coming from wind, and now solar increases significantly, apart from a small hydro, biomass, and waste to power is significantly less still. But when we look into the world consumption pattern, energy consumption pattern as per IEA, they're also more or less same kind of renewable spectrum, like near to 15% is there, but it varies, depends on country to country and feedstock availability. So when we specifically look into the India, we have huge potential to use biomass as waste. Installed capacity is only 3.6, but we have estimated potential of 22.5 gigawatts. So there is huge potential, particularly in Indian context. So not only energy, I would like to show this slide, which I have picked from US Department of Energy. For all our materials requirement right now, what we are using, the basic feedstock is again fossils, particularly petroleum, natural gas. All these blue and red lines are moving throughout the spectrum of products right now which we are using. So we are not only dependent on fossils for our energy needs, but we are also dependent on fossils for our material requirement, which is very significant aspect. And this is nothing but a fossil-based economy, because we are dependent on fossils, and mostly it's a linear economy. So the alarming situation now, as I told in earlier slide, fossil resources are finite, and exponential growth of population will have serious influence on the finite ecosystem, to sustain the finite ecosystem and resources. So we have to search for alternative material. That is very clear. So here I would like to show a couple of slides on urban metabolism. As we look into the urban space right now, urban cities are mostly responsible for 80% of GDP, 75% of global consumption, particularly material consumption, and 70% of global emissions. So it's very significant in figures. So the resources, particularly the materials and other energy we extract from external environment and transport to urban area as raw materials, some semi-finished or finished products, and will be utilized to a certain extent and a little bit stocked, little bit recycled, and mostly end up with landfills, even though they have significant potential, still it has value. So 75% consumption, global consumption is going to be used in very little, like about less than 5% of the urban space around the globe. So there is significant metabolic disorder in urban context, particularly this metabolic disorder can be accounted from resource wastage, very disruptive material flow, open loops, and a lot of stress on environment. So when we look into the materials which we are talking about in urban space, we can subdivide into 4, but basically 2 are the important thing, technical and biological. Other 2 will involve in these materials also. Technical are basically metals, plastics, glass, and construction. From urban ecosystem, when we use it, it will come as a technical waste after stocking some material, and which can be recycled, reused, or refurbished. But right now, most of the things are going for landfills. Biological is important component where agriculture, food, wood, fiber, dairy, livestock, which right now we are using in urban ecosystem, will become after consumption biological waste or emissions, still which have a lot of value in the form of carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, oxygen, as well as energy. But little bit is being recovered, but most of thing is going for landfill, even though they have a capacity to regenerate back. So these are the 2 important things. And I would like to show this global emission figures. When we look into the greenhouse emissions global context, we have significant emissions, particularly 65% plus 11% because of carbon dioxide, wherein 65% relates to energy, fossil consumption, and industrial process, and 17% because of land use pattern and forestry. So the second big greenhouse gas, which is after carbon dioxide, it is methane, about 16%, followed by 6% of nitrous oxide and 2% of fluorine gas. So when we again divide this global emissions into emissions into 2 categories, the global carbon emissions of 55% is attributed for our energy utility as well as heating purpose and transportation. So this can be significantly reduced by energy efficiency practices or supplementing with renewable energy. But the other 45% is very significant, which accounts for industrial activities as well as other activities. So among these 45%, 24% is due to food-based activities, particularly starting from agriculture to logistics to consumption towards wastage. So when we look into this 24%, again among 24%, 10% is because of wastage of food. So this is very significant. 24 is very significant when we look into the total spectrum. So we have significant biological component which can be regenerated back so that we can reduce the emissions. So here I would like to say a couple of slides on linear economy. So right now, as I told, we are our economy is linear. It's a cradle to grave approach. Sorry, it's an extractive industrial model. We are practicing it since industrialization for past 200 years. So this is a take, make, use, and dispose practice where even though resource has been, material has value, we are disposing in landfill. So according to an estimation, according to estimation in European Union, about 15 tons of resource is used per year per capita, wherein 5 tons will go as a waste. And among that, 60%, even though it has value, will go to landfill. So we are losing 60% of the material, particularly in these as per these figures. So this is one slide. I would like to say a few of the points with respect to linear economy. When we look into the global context, domestic material consumption, it's about 40 billion tons in 2010, which accounts for 5 to 27 tons per person in this linear model. So when we look into these figures, estimated figures, DMSC will rise to 90 to 180 billion tons per year, accounting for 80 to 17 tons per person per year by 2050. So the population by 2050 will grow from at present 7.8 millions to near 10 billions. So India accounts for 18% of global population. So there will be greater demand for resources. If we continue to live like this and produce like today, by 2050, we will need 3 times more resources. Particularly, we have finite resources, 50% of more fuel, 70% of more food is required, along with feed and fiber, and 50% of more of water. So, and moreover, to add to this, about 70% people will live in cities. So again, when we look into the cities, 75 to 80% of natural resource consumption will be in cities. 70% of global emissions will come from cities, and 50% of global waste is produced in cities. So it's very significant, and we have to change it. So we have to go with the Sustainable Development Agenda 12, responsible consumption and production. So that is basically a strategy towards moving towards a circular economy. So we have to transit from linear economy to circular economy, from cradle to grave approach to cradle approach, which is a regenerative and resilient approach. When we look into the circular economy, so the raw material, once we source from Mother Earth, after designing it, then we will use for certain purpose, and then that material will be redistributed, and then consumption, use, repair, and then collection, recycling. So by way of this, we will lose very little amount of material instead of linear model where after consumption we'll go for landfills. So we are trying to loop the circle, close the circle. So in this process, the basically circular economy platform depends on 3 of the important driving factors as told by Ellen MacArthur Foundation: designing waste, keep material in use, regenerating natural systems. So basically designing of waste, whenever we are manufacturing a product, we have to design its waste also, like it should be used as a feedstock in other process. Likewise, waste, once they reject from certain process, will be a feedstock for other process, so that we can increase the resource recovery efficiency, so that we can reduce the waste, residual waste. And we have to keep the material in use as far as possible. So once the material becomes a waste and then used for other process, then that waste will be again looped. Likewise, we have to maximize the resource usage. So third one, regenerating natural system. This is very important, particularly with respect to biogenic waste. So it should mimic with the nature behavior, like whatever the material which is coming from biological component will be reused again or sent into nature, so that the circulation, natural ecological balance can be sustained. So moving from linear to circular economy is one of the strategy which address sustainable production and consumption, and will have a significant role to play to conserve the fossil-based resources for future generation. So we are, as I told, according to regeneration natural system, we are looking for working for bio-based economy, as we are looking into biological material as feedstock and trying to use biological process to produce some of the chemicals and fuels, which I would like to show in next slides. So in this context, particularly when we look into the circular economy, waste is one of the important feedstock which we are trying to work on as a resource material. So we have in Indian context 4 different kinds of waste, starting from municipal solid waste, sewage, fecal sludge, as well as industrial wastewater. Municipal solid waste accounts in India for about 150,000 tons per day, according to Ministry of House and Urban Affairs. And the basic advantage with Indian municipal waste, more than 50% is biodegradable in nature. So we can regenerate back into the system. So So that is one of the advantage. And the second one, sewage, about 30 billion liters of sewage is generated in India per day, which accounts for inherent energy of 240 megawatts, but it also has significant potentials to resource recovery in the form of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. So that is very important nutrient, and which is again a fossil-based potassium and phosphates. Potassium, it's again a fossil-based material, which is at the extension. The availability will reduce significantly in the coming days. And third one, fecal sludge. So far, it was not much used for as a resource, but it has significant potential, contain a good amount of carbon and nutrients. And industrial waste, as everybody know, it has significant carbon loads, which can be recovered back, depends on the nature of wastewater. So when we look into the product availability, the municipal solid waste availability will increase every year because of our economic increment as well as population rise. There will no depth of material for future generation. Municipal solid waste will be always there, and 10% increment will say it has a significant potential to go with the industrialized models. So again, particularly right now, we are using 4% of waste to energy potential in India. So still a lot of potential. So when we have a waste or wastewater, it needs to be treated before disposal. It's a regulatory requirement. So when we have wastewater treatment, particularly, I am very much interested in biological wastewater treatment, because biological wastewater treatment systems are always sustainable. They will try to convert pollutants, particularly in the form of carbon and nutrients, to one form to other. And basically, when we go for anaerobic process, we will get chemicals or energy. So when in any STP or wastewater treatment plants, we have the main unit operation is biological wastewater treatment, either in the form of aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic try to convert to TCA cycle, CO, carbon and nutrients into CO2, H2O and new cell by using oxygen as terminal electron acceptor. So it's an energy intensive process. So we have energy in, we are trying to give oxygen. So it's an energy intensive process, but anaerobic process or energy giving process, reducing process, where particularly everybody knows about methanogenesis. It's a matured process which is there for almost 100 years in the form of gobar gas, which will try to convert carbon to methane by using CO2 and H2 as terminal electron acceptor. However, methane has its own disadvantage, which is 20 times more has 20 times more global warming potential than CO2. So alternatively, now scientists around the globe are trying to use anaerobic process to convert into hydrogen as terminal product, or bioelectricity, or bioplastics, or solvents, so that they can recover resource in the form of either fuel, clean fuel, or materials. So apart from using bacteria, there is recently people are again trying significantly on using microalgae as feedstock by mixotrophic mode of cultivation to convert both CO2, inorganic form of CO2 and organic form of CO2 to biomass and some other products which will have significant value. So this will try to, these two processes, particularly using microalgae or anaerobic process, algae again photosynthesis, try to convert the pollutants, which is to some other useful products. So this is sustainable alternatives. Now, particularly in biorefinery systems or waste to recovery, people are trying to use biogenic materials as feedstock to convert it to various products. So why we have to use waste, particularly I try to put some of the wastewater which is available in India from dairy, composite chemical, microcrystalline cellulose, domestic sewage, spent wash. So you can see this table where we have significant amount of carbon which we represent in the form of COD. So it is ranging from 420 with domestic sewage to near about 150,000 mg per liter of COD. So significant amount of carbon is available, which is a good feedstock for any bacterial activity or microbial activity. Apart from that, it also required good amount of nitrogen NNP, which again these wastewater will contain significant amount of NNP. So CNP will function as a good feedstock for any biological process to treat it to tweak the process towards our requirement. So when we have solid waste, basically solid waste, biodegradable solid waste is very significant, has high COD values, and now at present it is mostly going for landfill, little bit for composting. It's also a very sustainable process, and little bit for incineration in some cases, and little bit for digestion for methane production. And we also have scope, particularly by going towards other process to convert into, by other biological process to convert into various platform chemicals or energy. So by this way, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, we can also increase energy and resource recovery efficiency. So likewise, when we take waste, particularly waste in the form of domestic wastewater or industrial wastewater, solid waste or CO2, gaseous emissions, by different biological process, we can produce bioproducts, spectrum of bioproducts, which have huge potential, significant applications apart from waste remediation. So in this process, there are some matured process, there are some process which came up to pilot scale, there are some process which are at lab scale. So whenever who want to work on this process, they have significant scope, particularly by using waste as a feedstock and trying to use some biological process to convert into bioproducts. So here I would like to say that waste is not a waste. Waste is a valuable resource, particularly future generations. And wastewater treatment should be always sustainable waste management right now. In future, particularly after 5 to 10 years, the treatment plants right now exist in India or around the globe will become biofactories where treatment will simultaneously happen apart from resource recovery. In some of the places in USA and Europe right now, they have changed the name of effluent treatment plants to resource recovery centers. So the perspective of waste is changing significantly, and waste will be the futuristic feedstock for our bioeconomy. So to happen all these, we required some biological process, which is, we have a couple of biological process which is at a matured stage, particularly anaerobic digestion to produce methane and CO2, compost. So apart from that, those two are not enough to make a sustainable resource recovery things. It needs other innovations and technologies or process to convert carbon to resources. So these waste biorefinery technologies are very essential to produce chemicals and energy. And I would like to say anaerobic microbiome, particularly reductive systems, are very versatile biofactories. So you can look into here, like when we give waste in the form of glucose, C6C, it will convert into different end products by treating the metabolic activity. So we can produce ethanol, we can produce bioplastics or biobutanol, again bioplastic ethanol, traditionally methane or hydrogen, or lipids. It again all depends on how we are trying to regulate the anaerobic microbiome. So this is, I would like to say, it's a very versatile biofactory, and I would also like to say this will form the starting point of a new biorefinery. So it will try to reduce the complexity of wastewater. It will try to make into some intermediate chemicals or fuels that can be again reused into high value products. So that will try to loop the biorefinery by placing at a very pivotal place. So we started on biohydrogen production since 2005. So the basic idea of using this working on biohydrogen production, I would like to say, is hydrogen is a clean fuel and has high energy conversion, will not produce any greenhouse gases, and there is a chance of producing hydrogen by anaerobic route. So, and we can say because of these things, when we are using waste and we are using biological process, we can say it's a low carbon hydrogen, renewable hydrogen. Basically right now, hydrogen is again produced by fossil-based materials, natural gas or some other things, or water splitting. So in 2005 we started, and in 2016 with the funding of MNRE, we are able to set up a pilot plant of 10 meters cube per capacity, and then try to recover the resources in an efficient way. We have developed a biorefinery facility in our ISCT, which I will explain at the end of the presentation. So when we look into the metabolic route of hydrogen production, it is more or less similar to methane production, where 4 steps are involved, that is hydrolysis, esterogenesis, as well as methanogenesis. So the basic idea of producing hydrogen is to terminate the final process, methanogenic process, where hydrogen will become a terminal process, and hydrogen is a terminal product along with CO2 and fat acids. This is the success where hydrogen production technology went up to pilot scale. So we try to use some of the strategies. I will try to explain in next slides. So when we look into the scope of our work, we try to produce hydrogen from wastewater. The idea is to use mixed culture so that all other economic constraints will be reduced, and the existing anaerobic digesters can be converted into hydrogen producing reactors. That is what our idea. So theoretically, when we look into the hydrogen production through acetic acid pathway, 1 mole of glucose, we can produce about 4 moles of hydrogen, apart from 2 moles of acetic acid. And again, with nitric acid pathway of 1 mole of nitric acid, we can produce 2 moles of hydrogen. On an average, 1 kg of when 1 kg of COD is removed, we can be able to produce near to 450 liters of hydrogen. These are the theoretical values, but we are not able to get these values. We are able to get 50 to 60% of conversion efficiencies because of some of the challenges. So initially, we tried to work with different wastewater. All the wastewater at such specific conditions, we're able to produce hydrogen. But that again depends on the nature of wastewater and organic load of wastewater. If the organic load is more, the hydrogen production is more. If our wastewater is biogenic in nature, we'll be able to produce good hydrogen. If it's non-biogenic, then production will be less. However, COD removal varies based on the wastewater composition. It varies from is somewhere 91% to 26%. On an average, it will be near to 50%. So this is one of the critical factors which I will address in next slide. So during the process of scaling up, we observed there are many challenges, particularly with respect to bacteria, that's biocatalyst, with respect to process, with respect to outlet from wastewater, and with respect to economics and purification. So the major problem is with coexisting of anaerobic consortia with mixed culture. So the bacterial culture will contain methanogenic bacteria along with estrogenic bacteria. Once the hydrogen is produced, the hydrogen along with VFA and CO2 will form into methane. So methanogenic bacteria survives and will be getting low hydrogen production. The second issue is fermentation inhibition because of production of VFA along with hydrogen, which reduce system buffering capacity, that it will go to acid redox condition. So overall efficiency, substrate conversion efficiency will reduce because of feedback inhibition. The third issue is the wastewater coming from hydrogen reactor always will contain residual carbon load, which needs to be treated prior to disposal. And another important factor, as I told, the composition of wastewater and carbon load will have a significant role to play. Economics is again an issue when we want to translate it to the technology level. So then the last thing is purification, storage, and transport. This is not my domain, but people are working on these aspects, which is also very significant for the success of the technology. So as I told, the biocatalyst selective enrichment is very important, particularly to produce hydrogen as a terminal end product. So we try to use some of the classic microbiology techniques where we try to create a shock loads in the form of acid shock, alkaline, heat or oxygen shock, or by using some chemical that can specifically suppress methanogenic activity. So by way of that, we are able to gain good amount of hydrogen production. So then again, we try to study the efficiency of these strategies for almost 1 year of time in reactor system. That's about 250 cycles. So we try to use different pretreatments, as I told earlier. And interestingly, after 1 year of time, we try to do diversity analysis. As you can see that the untreated inoculum, which was given initially, will have all kind of bacterial groups. But after operation of 1 year of time, most of the pretreatment systems have shown the domination of firmicutes. so near to about 70%. So they shows that selective enrichment of firmicutes, which is basically the hydrogen producing estrogenic bacteria. So this strategy helped us to scale up the system. So these are the various bioreactors which we have used during our lab scale optimization as well as during upscaling process. And based on these studies, we are able to design a pilot scale reactor for Ministry of New and Renewable Energy with a 10 meter cube of capacity. This pilot P&I diagram of pilot scale. This is the photograph of with different unit operation. The different unit operations will help to regulate the system buffering capacity and regulate the bacterial activities specifically towards osteogenesis and collection of biogas and release of biogas with safe because hydrogen storage is difficult. So we try to store some of the gas and try to release into atmosphere. So this is this system, we are able to produce about 50,000 liters per day of hydrogen with 50% conversion efficiency using biogenic municipal waste as well as food and vegetable waste. So apart from 70% of CO2 removal efficiency. So then we also try to analyze the sustainability, environment sustainability of this process with reference to the existing process. Basically, whenever we are going with a new process, we cannot assume that it is sustainable even though we are using waste, because it will create a much significant problem if we are not properly optimizing. So nowadays, any new technology needs to be assessed for its environment sustainability using life cycle assessment tools. So we try to compare the performance, sustainability performance with respect to 4 damage categories: human health, ecosystem quality, climate change, and resource. With respect to the existing traditional hydrogen producing process. When we look into the human health effect is significantly less compared to the other traditional process. And similarly, ecosystem quality is good compared to other 3 processes. And climate change issue, particularly because we are using waste, it goes to negative, but other processes have significant climate change influence. And resources, we are using waste, so it is towards negative, but other things are using natural resources. So it is having that resource thing. So all the 4 categories, the efficiency, sustainable efficiency is relatively good with respect to biohydrogen production process, and also compile with 8 of the 12 green chemistry principles. So however, there are still problems. When we want to scale up the process, we calculated the hydrogen production. We are getting near to 150 rupees per kg of hydrogen, but the market cost is still less. Somewhere it comes between 75 to 125, depends on the place and availability. So this made us to study other aspects, particularly the side stream valorization to reduce the economic burden of the process, but to give the market value lower than the existing value for hydrogen. So then we try to integrate with other process, particularly initially the hydrogen production process, the outlet will still contain a lot of organic carbon. So that we try to integrate with microbial electrolytic cell for hydrogen production, or biomethane process to produce methane, or anoxic bacteria to produce bioplastics, or as organic fertilizer to increase the phosphate availability, or mixotrophic cultivation of algae towards biodiesel production, or in microbial cell for bioelectricity production, or in photofermentation for hydrogen. So in this way of integration in a biorefinery mode, the resources are again used for the second product, either in the form of energy or in the form of chemicals or biodiesel. So by that way, we can increase the resource accuracy. So I will try to discuss a couple of the things, so particularly of much interest. Recently, the Honorable Ministry of Road and Transport and Highway in the Gazette notified that supplementation of hydrogen in the form of hydrogen CNG from 4 to 9% is coming encouraging. So here the basic thing is by supplementing hydrogen up to 9%, the efficiency of engine can be increased. We can also reduce the emissions, and the same infrastructure, engine infrastructure, we can use. That's the basic thing. So this is coming up in a big way right now because government also has included it in the policy. So, this is basically it's called biohethane. Hethane means hydrogen and methane. So 4 to 9% of hydrogen with compressed natural gas will have a lot of potential advantage. So another thing, the bioplastic production, the outlet from hydrogen reactor, when we use in aerobic cultivation followed by stress condition with anoxic condition, will convert the carbon source into 50% of the biomass weight polyhydroxyalkylate bioplastics, which have significant potential. So this is one of the important route where we can sustainably convert into bioplastics, the waste material. So we, as I told earlier, we can also use this waste by 10% supplementation as a organic reagent to increase the solubility of phosphates, availability of phosphates to roots. So we try to a farming activity in lab with bottle gourd and observed significant increment in size as well as number of bottle gourds production after organic farming. So apart from that, recently we again started working on fat acid production. As I told you, when we are producing hydrogen through acetic acid pathway, we'll be getting 2 moles of acetic acid or butyric acid that way, along with 2 moles of hydrogen, 1 mole of methane. So we try to use this as a strategy, and we use the food waste and try to produce these fat acids, which are nothing but platform chemicals basically, which at present is produced again from fossils. So this acetic, butyric and propionic acid, when we are trying to increase their productivity, we are again getting higher production of hydrogen. So more the fat acid production, more hydrogen production. So we have dual benefits here. So we, the cost of these fat acids are more than hydrogen. So when we are trying to produce this, then the cost of hydrogen has significantly decreased. So side stream valorization is one of the important strategies in bioprocess in order to reduce the economic viability of final product or in order to increase resource recovery aspect. So now our major focus is on fat acid production, but also on specific fat acid production like propionic acid, which will have high market value. So here, before closing the astrogenesis, I would like to say that this has huge potential. Not only what I have told as primary integration, secondary integration, or 3-stage integration, where initially waste goes to astrogenic bacteria, and through different pathways, we can produce different products and primary products in the form of acetic and hydrogen, secondary products by integrating other biological process, or other third biological process, we can produce spectrum of products. So it's one of the huge potential, and I would like to say it's the starting point of any biorefinery, biogenic biorefinery. So coming to the second process, I would like to discuss is on microbial fuel cell. We'll also call it as microbial electrochemical technology. So the basic idea of starting microbial fuel cell, when we are discussing about hydrogen production in conference and other meetings, basically the major issue is what to do with the CO2, which is again producing along with hydrogen. So normally when we want to use hydrogen, it requires 99.9% of purity of hydrogen for fuel cells. But separation is a major issue there. So then we try to use the same bacteria, same wastewater, same system, but separated by proton exchange membrane. By keeping couple of electrodes, anode and cathode, connecting with resistance, we are able to produce proton and electrons by anaerobic metabolism from waste. The protons will go to proton exchange membrane to cathode. The electrons to anode pass through resistance and enter cathode chamber, where in presence of oxygen, proton electron convert into H2. So because of this, there will be a cell EMF form, and that is nothing but electricity. So here, no need for separation of CO2, and we are directly converting energy here. So as per the theoretical thing, 1 mole of glucose can produce about 24 protons and 24 electrons, and 1 kg of COD, if we are able to remove, we'll get about 170 watts of energy. So, but we are only getting 15 to 20% right now. There are many limitations and things needs to be optimized. So during this course of 15 years, we have seen significant significant applications, incremental applications, particularly with respect to MFC. That's why I call it as microbial electrochemical system. Initially, we started with MFC, but we found during these 15 years, it has wider applications. It can take any kind of wastewater as a feedstock, including domestic waste, biogenic waste, or complex industrial wastewater, or fermented waste, or gas, or saline wastewater. And then based on the output we require, if you are go with MFC, we can produce power apart from wastewater treatment. If you are only interested in wastewater treatment, then BET is bioelectrochemical treatment. When we want to produce some kind of chemical by using gases, emissions, or fermented effluents, we can use a bioelectrochemical system. Or we want to only produce hydrogen, microbial electrolysis cell, by little input of energy, or we want to treat and separate saline wastewater. So then microbial desalination. So wider application has triggered its interest in the research fraternity. And some of the process is almost in the stage of scaling up, particularly BET and BES systems. Microbial fuel cells in some cases, particularly in a couple of countries, it gets scaled up. So I would like to say it's a multi-phased application, very versatile platform, apart from acidogenesis, and it also will have a very important role to play in biorefining. So we try to use different kinds of wastewater and showed a good power production apart from very good CO2 removal efficiency. So these are some of the microbial fuel cells. Initially we started with H type of fuel cell, but this is not sustainable. Then we moved to single chamber system, which is very much similar to anaerobic reactor. Then membrane is one of expensive thing here, so we try to eliminate membrane and put some of the inorganic silica as membrane, single sediment kind of MFC. Then we went up to single chamber hybrid MFCs where there is no membrane or any kind of other separating materials. Then in order to increase the accumulate the power, we make a multi-electrode hybrid systems in a single chamber. There's a different chambers, about 36 chambers with different electrode stacking. So it can continuously produce power from domestic wastewater, which we patented. And this is another version of a continuous mode of operation, 8 stacked fuel cells, which can produce about near to 1 watts per meter square, which we have developed for a Indo-EU project. So likewise, there are many significant configuration variations, depends on the applications available with microbial fuel cell. Say solid phase MFC, this is a Rizzo based MFC where we can use Reud zone to try to reduce some of the contamination, or water based system in a wetland system. So there are a significant scope, but more than that, there are still challenges existing with specifically for bioelectricity production. So where low efficiency, as I told, less than 20% because of electron losses and biocatalyst nature. Biocatalyst has its own negative things with respect to emission, release of electrons as well as transfer, and electrodes, membranes are also important aspects where membranes were considered to be expensive, particularly in AFIA. Electrodes, we cannot go for metal-based electrodes. And cost of materials also important things. Likewise, we try to address some of the system parameters optimization, particularly with respect to operating redox conditions, and we try to optimize distance between electrodes in order to increase the electron recovery, and try to study some of the electrode materials with which are non-toxic to bacteria, because biocatalyst is bacteria. We cannot use the toxic metal-based electrodes. So graphite, and compared with other metals, but graphite is the best one. Likewise, we also study the direct electron transfer using biofilm as a media growth, as a biofilm growth on anode. And like we try to study some of the low-cost membranes in place of proton exchange membranes. So apart from that, as I told, bioelectrochemical treatment systems are very important entity, particularly during 15 years we observed. I would like to show some couple of examples, particularly with respect to complex wastewater. So this is a pharmaceutical wastewater where we try to compare MFC. MFC is a bioelectrochemical treatment system with conventional anaerobic treatment. You can see the removal efficiency of all the parameters, wastewater parameters. All the parameters, with respect to all parameters, BET system has shown higher efficiency. Particularly, you can see the TDS, which was not normally happen in biological process, able to get about 40% of TDS removal, which is very significant. And also color and COD, more than 50% higher than the conventional anaerobic treatment. Apart from that, the toxicity reduction was very significant with respect to BET compared to anaerobic treatment, color removal, as well as apart from that, we are getting power also. So this shows the potentiality of MFC as treatment system for complex wastewater. And then we applied to still complex petroleum sludge, and we observed very interesting results, particularly after treatment in BET compared with anaerobic treatment. There is significant reduction in complexity of molecule. Naphtha formation was very high in BET. The complex molecules get decreased to simple molecules, which can be easily degradable by biological routes. So then we try to apply it to the contaminated soils by different electrode configuration to increase the remediation efficiency, particularly with respect to contaminated soils with polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which also showed very interesting results based on the electrode placement. And this, particularly this BET system, very significant with respect to color different, particularly dye-based different, which shows very good results. Likewise, we can also recover some of the valuable metals of the cathode chamber, and we can use this as a system in a very complex chloroalkali industry. We proposed after biological process, the patented BET system before reverse osmosis, so that it can reduce 30 to 40% of TDS, so that load on reverse osmosis can be reduced, so that water can be reused. This is a ZLD approach. Likewise, there are many applications, particularly MFC, not only for power production, but for wastewater treatment. Another important and emerging application I would like to show here is bioelectrochemical system, particularly relevant to our biorefineries. So when we use these systems, MFC system, I would like to say, in place of BES, as a pre-treatment system, we will be able to reduce the complexity of that particular substrate, so that the secondary biological process, either esterogenesis or anaerobic process, the performance can be increased. Particularly in this case, this is the estrogenic reactor where we want to produce hydrogen. So conventionally, this red line, you can see 100 at treating with 100 ohms resistant for 6 hours of time, we are able to achieve higher biogas production. And similarly, by putting this MFC system initially, we can simplify the wastewater substrate, particularly that can go for, particularly we have used for vegetable wastewater that can produce good amount of VFA biogas. You can see the increment in reducible sugars, which is very much relevant to estrogenic fermentation towards biogas and VFA production. And similarly, we also used to sewage sludge, which also showed very good results. And microbial electrolysis cell, a little input of energy, we are able to produce hydrogen from residual wastewater. So the recent innovation, particularly with respect to microbial electronics system, microelectrochemical system, is electrofermentation. Basically, everybody knows fermentation is one of the versatile platform for bio-based products, but it has its own limitations with respect to time. So we can regulate the fermentation process by giving little input of energy by a defined electrodes, setup of electrodes, or we can regulate the metabolic activities towards specific product. Here we try to use it by using waste as a feedstock and try to convert into fatty acids, but by regulating the metabolic activity, so that we are able to increase the productivity by 50%. So this is one of the important application which is coming up in a big way. Or we can also try to convert CO2, which is 30 to 35% in any biomethanization plant, towards more of methane, so that biogas upgradation can happen. So in the system itself, by placing a electrode assembly in a defined way, it will help to convert CO2 to methane in presence of hydrogen and VFA. So this is also one of the important strategy which is coming up, in situ upgradation of biogas. So the last application here I would like to say, the CO2 in cathode chamber. Anode chamber will be very much similar to MFC. The cathode chamber, there will be homoestrogenic bacteria. Atmosphere CO2, we can convert into fat acids. This is also one of the area which is coming up in a big way. So directly converting by bacterial activity in presence of some cell AMFs, CO2 to fat acids. So we are trying to increase the productivity rates by regulating the electrotrophy of this bioelectrochemical system towards maximizing fat acid production. So this, and I would like to say here, bioelectrofermentation, as I explained earlier, has again a significant scope here to regulate the process towards either ethanol production by taking CO2 or propanol, butanol, succinic acid. So there is huge scope by converting gaseous emissions towards chemicals. So the last process I would like to say with respect to biorefinery, it's a photosynthesis, which is a process, because of this process, we are surviving, human is surviving on the globe, and the same way, it also forms a basis, very important terminal process in any biorefinery system. It can take photobacteria or microalgae plants to convert CO2 and sunlight, in presence of sunlight, to some value-added products. So initially, we started working on biodiesel production by using mixed microalgae by dual mode of operation, by biomass growth stage as well as lipid synthesis stage. And we are able to get good lipid productivity by mixotrophic mode of cultivation. So we try to upscale it at some of the, a couple of algal ponds which we constructed. These are the algal ponds. We also try to optimize in photobioreactors, tubular system raceway ponds, flat panel systems. Flat panel systems are more effective. Tubular systems has its own disadvantage. Photofermenters are very specific to high value products. Raceway ponds are always easy to operate. So with this design, we try to construct 3000 liter 2 raceway ponds, and we try to produce data which is able to give 15 grams of biomass productivity with 50% of lipid productivity. So then we try to integrate the biomass after lipid production towards other value-added products, which I will try to explain in next slides in a biorefinery. So here I would like to close my presentation with this explaining about waste biorefinery. As I told, refinery, normally petroleum crude will be taken as a feedstock and try to convert it to different useful products in a refinery mode. Likewise, we can also take waste as a feedstock. By integrating biological as well as some of the chemical routes, we can refine the waste into different value-added products. This is the concept of waste biorefinery. There is a closed loop approach because trying to use resource as far as possible. Based on this model, we have developed a waste biorefinery facility in IICT, integrating with hydrogen production process, wherein any kind of wastewater or waste can be used as a feedstock. If we are taking waste, we have to pre-treat it. So once this is sent to the initial reactor, I would like to say it's a microbial fuel cell where the complexity of wastewater get reduced to little bit apart from production of electricity. 20% of carbon conversion happens here, and the simplified wastewater go to second process, the main process, acidogenesis, where hydrogen will be the main product here. So here about 70 to 80% carbon will be converted. The residual fraction will go for any of these processes, either photohydrogen process for hydrogen production, or methanogenesis for methane, or anaxogenesis for bioplastics, or MFC for electricity production, or algal cultivation for biodiesel. So the integration of three processes with three products, 90 to 95% of conversion efficiency, carbon conversion efficiency. The residual portion will go for treatment, terminal treatment. The water can be reused again when we are using waste or can send for garden. So we're trying to close the loop. We're trying to convert the resources into three forms of products. If algal cultivation is there, again, fourth form of product will be there. So maximizing the resource recovery in a closed loop approach. This is the overview of the constructed waste biorefinery facility integrated to hydrogen production, closed view of different unit operations. So likewise, there is significant scope, particularly to use waste as a feedstock. So as a chemical institute, we are trying to use biogenic municipal waste by some hydrolysis or fermentation to produce sugars or fatty acids or biopolymers, which will form a material for synthesis, particularly when we are using the renewable feedstock for any chemical route. That whole chemical process will be sustainable and also accounts for green chemistry principles. So this kind of application in supplementing renewable material will always has an edge over other process. So likewise, we have conceptually designed urban biocycles, all the open loops in urban ecosystem. We try to loop into resources, to convert into resources so that the whole urban space can make it as a sustainable platform. So urban space will not depend by integrating, closing the loops, it will not depend for its resources from outside environment. So this is the concept of smart city. So this kind of metabolic studies has to happen not to utilize the resources among itself. So this is a concept which is also coming up right now. Likewise, we can use waste to convert into value-added products, particularly carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus. There are many models, and we can also develop self-sustainable models, particularly with photosynthetic systems, wherein we can use we have used microalgae by cultivating it and then harvesting, extracting lipid. The biomass can be again looped back into different process to convert into different products, so that we can close the loop. So it is a self-sustainable system which doesn't require anything externally except sunlight and water, which can be again circulated, but can produce different products. So this kind of self-sustainable systems are coming up in a big way, particularly when we look into the Mars program, where humans are sent to the external space. They cannot carry the material for their activities, so they have to take limited resources. And again, they have to make a closed loop systems among themselves so that the materials can be regenerated. So these kind of systems have life supporting systems is very much essential, particularly to sustain the sustainability ecological services of the earth also. Likewise, we also try to develop with Ajolla, using it as a feedstock, the circular loop approach, or there are significant scope, particularly using CO2 or with the waste biorefinery. We can, by circular loops, many products we can produce. That depends on the strategies which we are using. So here I would like, before closing, I would like to again say that linear to circular economy, there are a lot of opportunities. This is the slide which I have shown initially. So the same thing can be replaced with this slide, where the basic material we can get from either biomass or waste, and can make all the products which are here, which we have made from fossils by using this waste material. So by way of supplementing certain extent of for this material with bio-based material, we can increase the life of fossils on that. That's the basis of bio-based economy and circular loop approaches. So we can also significantly reduce the gases emissions. So this is one of the strategy which have sustainable things, particularly Europe as well as other China as well as Asian countries are trying to go in a big way because of higher population as well as less resources availability. And it also supports many of the sustainable development goals, majority of sustainable development goals, apart from 12, which is responsible consumption and production. So to conclude, waste is a potential resource, and there will be annual growth of more than 7%. So there is no dearth of material, and bioeconomy, bio-based platform chemicals will have a huge market in coming days with 11% of annual growth rate. And apart from that, it also significantly reduce the gases emissions and also produce green jobs and employment opportunities, and will form a very good entity for small, medium, and entrepreneurs also. So this is the team of students whose work I have presented here. And I would like to acknowledge IICT for supporting my research, apart from funding agencies such as Department of Biotechnology, Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, as well as CSR. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Sir, I would like to ask one question. In one of the slides, you mentioned that there is a problem on tubular algal here.
Some sound is coming. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, in one of your slides, you mentioned that there is a problem in tubular algal here.
Yeah.
Good field using tubular algal here.
Yes.
Sir, what's the reason behind it?
What is it?
Means what's the reason behind it? Why you are not able to get good yield in tubular algal?
So there will be heat buildup in the system. So we cannot sustain growth, as well as because of the temperature buildup, the chlorophyll content is significantly reduced, and it is showing on productivity. So the degas system is designed for it in order to remove the heat trap there.
Okay. Now it is open for the discussion. So if any participant have any doubt regarding this, or if they have any query, please raise. Anyone have any such kind of doubt?
Yeah, that's fine.
So another important thing, you also mentioned in microbial fuel cells. But once this fuel cells is we made it, how we can make it? Means disposal things. What is your solution? We cannot make it for a longer time. So how can we
there's some sound is there. I'm not clearly getting you. So
okay.
Please again repeat.
My question is that if we use some microbial fuel cells,
Yeah.
so it has also some expiry date, like all other cells.
Not exactly. The basic thing, when we are using graphite and without membranes, there is no expiry. But when we are using membrane, there will be always problem. We have to replace the membrane. Other things will remain same. It's more or less very similar to wastewater treatment plant. We can visualize it as a ASP system where some electrodes are placed. In that way, we are trying to design. There is no expiry, but we have some kind of problems with membrane. So that's why we are trying to remove it, membrane, so that even though we are getting less power efficiency, and also not using any expensive electrodes or coating of platinum or silver. So it has to go with wastewater. So to make it economically viable. So because of that, we are getting less efficiency, even though